Okay, I want to start with something pretty amazing about our bodies. Think about this. The liver. It's the only solid organ we have that can actually regrow itself.
It's incredible, really, a unique superpower in biology.
You could lose a big chunk of it and it just rebuilds. Almost mythical, right?
Absolutely.
So here's the big question, the paradox, really. If the liver's so tough, why doesn't it always bounce back after someone stops drinking? After years of alcohol damage. Why does that recovery sometimes just fail?
That's exactly the puzzle we're diving into today. We've looked at some really critical research, and the answer isn't just about, simple wear and tear. It turns out there's this hidden feedback loop. Alcohol doesn't just hurt the liver cells, it actively messes with the body's own instructions for repair. It jams the healing process.
Right, so it's not passive damage, it's active interference. That's what we need to unpack.
Exactly.
So our mission today is to really get into how this cycle works. Down at the molecular level, there's a key protein involved, apparently acting like a cellular editor.
That's right, ESRP2. We'll get into that.
And maybe the most important part for you listening, why this whole mechanism suggests that the risk threshold for serious liver problems might be, well, a lot lower than we generally assume. We might need to rethink what safe limits actually mean.
Okay, let's start with that regeneration ability itself. When the liver gets injured, its response is really unique. The mature liver cells, the hepatocytes, they don't just split like skin cells.
They do something different.
Yeah, they perform this kind of biological reset. They roll back their identity, becoming more flexible, almost like, stem cells or fetal cells.
That reset. That's the key to multiplying quickly, right? To replace what was lost.
Precisely. Think of the normal healing process like a well-oiled construction project. It has phases.
Okay, like what?
Phase 1. You tear down the damaged bits, clear the debris, and basically reset the workers, the remaining cells.
Got it. Demolition and prep.
Phase 2. Those reset cells multiply like crazy. They put up the new walls, the basic structure of the replacement tissue. This is the proliferation phase the liver is famous for.
Right, the rebuilding part. But that's not the end of the story if it's working properly. There's a third step.
Absolutely crucial third step. It's the finishing work, the graduation. Those newly made cells have to transition back into fully mature, working adult liver cells.
They need to be able to do their jobs again, filter blood, make bile, manage metabolism.
Exactly. Only then is the liver actually healed and functional. But with alcohol damage, this is where the system breaks down. That final critical transition often fails.
Okay, this is fascinating. So the initial steps might still happen, the reset, the multiplying. The liver looks like it's repairing.
That's the insidious part, yeah. Repair activity seems to be happening, but the cells get trapped. The study suggests they get stuck in this kind of suspended phase. They're active enough to divide, but they seem almost genetically paralyzed, unable to complete that last step into becoming fully functional adult cells. Imagine a site full of workers who've gone through basic training, but are now just sitting in classrooms, practicing drills over and over, never actually graduating to build the building.
And they're clogging up the works.
Exactly. They take up space, they don't do the jobs needed like filtering toxins, and they actually put more strain on the healthy cells that are left. The liver might look busy, structurally rebuilding, but the resulting tissue just isn't functional.
So if they're stuck like that, the question becomes, what is holding them there? It can't just be that they ran out of steam. It sounds like something is actively blocking them.
Precisely. It's not passive failure. It's active interference with the signals, the instructions that tell a cell, okay, time to mature now.
Which brings us to this self-sabotaging loop you mentioned.
Right. It involves two main things working together negatively. First, there's inflammation. When you have an injury, the immune system rushes in. Inflammation is the cleanup crew.
Necessary first step.
Necessary, yes, but the chemical signals released by that inflammation while cleaning up also seem to disrupt the delicate messaging needed for the cells to complete their recovery and mature properly.
Okay, so the rescue team accidentally cuts the communication lines needed for the final phase of the rescue? That's ironic.
Darkly ironic, yes. And this disruption seems to target a specific molecule, the one you mentioned earlier.
ESRP2. The editor protein.
Exactly, ESRP2. Think of it as the chief editor or maybe a quality control manager for the cell's RNA messages.
RNA, the instructions copied from our DNA.
Right. DNA gets transcribed into raw RNA. But that raw RNA needs to be processed, edited, what scientists call spliced, cut and pasted correctly to create the final instructions for building a functional protein. ESRP2 is a master regulator of that splicing process for liver cells.
So ESRP2 makes sure the cell reads the blueprint correctly to build the right parts.
Perfectly put. It ensures the final protein product is the right shape, goes to the right place, and does the right job for a mature liver cell. But the study suggests inflammation directly interferes with ESRP2. It reduces how much is available or how well it works.
Okay, let me try an analogy. Inflammation creates massive static on a radio channel. The message to mature is being sent out as RNA.
Yeah.
But ESRP2, the editor that should clean up the signal, is hampered by the static. So the message arrives garbled.
That's a fantastic analogy. That's essentially what the research points towards. The cell tries to follow the instructions, but because the editing is messed up due to low or malfunctioning ESRP2,
The proteins get built wrong.
Yeah.
Or sent to the wrong place.
Exactly. They're useless for the adult functions needed. It's like sending firefighters to a burning building, but the address gets scrambled in the dispatch call. They show up, the trucks are there, the water is there, but they're on the wrong block. The effort is there, but it's ineffective because the instructions were corrupted.
And this is where the vicious cycle part comes in. How does this error perpetuate itself even after maybe the initial trigger, like alcohol, is gone?
It builds on itself. Step 1, injury causes inflammation. Step 2, that inflammation suppresses ESRP2 function. Step 3, low ESRP2 leads to widespread RNA splicing errors. Step 4, those errors keep the cells stuck in that immature, non-functional state.
Right, the stalled cells.
And here's the kicker. Step 5. These stalled, stressed out cells actually release more distress signals,
Oh no.
which calls in even more inflammation to the site.
And that inflammation then further suppresses ESRP2, leading to more errors, more stalled cells, more distress signals. Round and round it goes.
Precisely. Alcohol might start the fire, set the trap, but once the cycle gets going, the liver's internal communication system stays jammed. It keeps calling for help in a way that just makes the problem worse.
So the really crucial takeaway here for people listening is that the damage from alcohol isn't just about killing liver cells. It's about actively reprogramming the healing process itself, jamming the communication needed for functional repair.
That's the core finding, and it explains why just quitting drinking, while absolutely essential, doesn't automatically flip a switch and put the liver back on a healthy track. That scrambled molecular language, those persistent splicing errors, can linger.
Which leads us straight into the really challenging part. If this repair sabotage system is so sensitive, this ESRP2 pathway, does it only get triggered by what we traditionally call heavy drinking?
This is where the recent research becomes quite concerning for public health guidance. Well, for years, advice has revolved around these sort of defined safe limits. But when you look at large-scale population studies over the last, say, 2 or 3 decades,
You see a trend.
you see a clear upward trend in serious liver scarring fibrosis, even in people who would be classified as moderate drinkers by traditional standards.
That's worrying. And we see it in hospitals too, right? More people admitted with advanced liver disease who don't fit the classic heavy user profile. U.S. hospital data reflects this. It suggests that maybe the old definition of what constitutes risky drinking is, well, maybe it's out of sync with our current population's physiology.
There was a specific study mentioned, wasn't there, from USC Keck?
Yes, that study tracked drinkers over 20 years. It found something really stark. The rate of advanced fibrosis, severe scarring, among people classified as heavy drinkers actually doubled during that period. Now, while that focused on heavy drinkers, it hints that something systemic might be lowering the liver's overall resilience. Maybe it's diet, maybe other environmental factors, but the threshold for damage seems to be getting lower across the board. The protective margin seems to be shrinking.
Okay, so why would that margin be shrinking? Does it connect back to the inflammation and the ESRP2 cycle we talked about? It connects directly. Think about underlying health conditions that are more common now. Things like obesity, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome. These conditions themselves create a state of chronic, low-grade inflammation throughout the body, including in the liver.
So the liver is already simmering. It's already dealing with some level of inflammatory stress even before alcohol enters the picture.
That's a good way to put it. These conditions basically prime the liver for failure. The inflammatory cleanup crew is already kind of partially deployed and maybe a bit stressed.
Which means it takes less of an additional push like from alcohol to trip that wire to suppress ESRP2 enough to start causing those critical editing failures.
Exactly. Alcohol doesn't necessarily have to cause the entire disaster from scratch. If the liver is already inflamed due to metabolic stress, even moderate amounts of alcohol might provide enough of an extra inflammatory hit to jam the communication, suppress ESRP2, and start that vicious cycle of splicing errors.
And because those errors persist, as you said, the damage, the scarring can continue even after someone stops drinking, especially if that underlying inflammation isn't addressed.
Right. The RNA messages stay garbled. That's why just quitting alcohol, well, step one, often isn't enough on its own. You also have to manage the underlying conditions, the metabolic health, that keep that inflammatory fire smoldering and the repair language scrambled.
Okay, so let's try to summarize this. We've uncovered this kind of dual challenge with alcohol and the liver. It's not just the immediate toxic hit.
No, the deeper danger is how it hijacks the liver's own repair program. It blocks the recovery by messing with that crucial ESRP2 editing system.
So the solution has to be twofold as well. You need to stop the ongoing harm from alcohol, obviously, but you also need to create conditions that allow the body's natural repair code to actually restart and run correctly.
Which puts a huge emphasis back on overall lifestyle, doesn't it? Reducing alcohol is critical, of course. But equally important is managing metabolic health balanced diet, healthy weight, staying active. These are the main levers we have to lower that baseline inflammation that makes the liver so vulnerable.
And looking ahead, the research seems to be pointing towards earlier detection, right? Since the failure starts at this molecular level, way before the organ shows obvious signs of failure.
That's the exciting frontier here, suggested by the study. Instead of waiting until the liver is already heavily scarred and failing structurally, researchers are thinking about how to spot the repair process failing much earlier.
How would they do that?
Well, potentially using blood tests, not just for general inflammation markers, but maybe even looking for specific molecular signatures, signs of that RNA splicing stress, evidence that ESRP2 isn't doing its job properly, spotting the communication breakdown before the irreversible scarring sets in.
It feels like a paradigm shift. Moving from managing end-stage organ damage to actually preventing the repair process from collapsing in the first place.
It really is. And it leaves us with a pretty important question for you, the listener, to think about. Imagine if routine health checks could include markers for this kind of repair failure. What if we could check the status of that ESRP2 editor function?
Instead of just waiting for liver enzymes to spike or scans to show damage.
Exactly. How much sooner could we intervene? How much damage could be prevented if we focused on the health of the repair process itself, not just the state of the organ after the damage is done?
Something definitely worth mulling over. It highlights the incredible complexity, but also the potential vulnerability of our own biology.
Absolutely.
Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. We hope this gives you some valuable insights. Stay curious, stay informed.
Until next time.